17 years ago, my father shoved the front door closed in my face and declared I was no longer his daughter. That night, standing in the downpour with nothing but a single duffel bag, I stopped being Amara Whitfield, the compliant child, and became the girl he tried to erase from existence. His words carved a wound, so deep it never fully healed. If you want to fly, do it without me. I constructed a life from that exile, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened when I walked back into his world at my brother's wedding. The foghorns from Portland Harbor moaned through the early morning mist, blending with the sharp aroma of coffee filling my small apartment. Light filtered weakly through the window, heavy with that gray, damp chill the Pacific Northwest always carries in October. I sat at the counter with an envelope in my hands, the words pressed across the front in elegant script. Whitfield family. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside lay a wedding invitation, ivory cardstock edged with silver, announcing that my younger brother Marcus was marrying Sophie in 14 days. And there it was, printed in careful lettering, the word that struck harder than the cold air seeping through the window frame. Family. After 17 years of silence, after being expelled and severed, somehow I was still listed as family. A surge of heat spread through my chest, equal parts fury and longing. Was I genuinely family, or just a name they couldn't remove without generating uncomfortable questions? I stared at the word until the letters blurred, then raised my eyes to the framed photograph on the wall. It showed the medical helicopter I'd piloted dozens of times into storms and emergencies. That aircraft had been more of a home to me than the house I'd been forced from. The sharp buzz of my phone shattered the moment. One new message, no name attached, just blunt words flashing across the screen. Don't come, don't embarrass him. I froze, the pulse in my throat pounding against my skin. I didn't need to ask who him was. Only one man possessed the power to send those words slicing through me like shattered glass. My father. I set the phone down slowly, the silence in the room so thick I could hear my own breathing. Then I released a shaky laugh, bitter at first, but sharp with determination. I deleted the message with one swipe. I whispered to the empty room, I'm going, not for him, for Marcus, and for what Sophie already knows. On the counter beside the invitation, I placed a small object I always kept hidden at the back of a drawer. A strip of medical gauze, stained and stiff with old seawater. The fabric had saved someone's life once, and its story belonged to me alone. For now, its presence was a quiet promise that the past wasn't finished with me yet. Before I tell you what that strip of gauze meant, and how it became the weapon that destroyed my father's carefully constructed image in front of everyone he'd ever tried to impress, drop a comment below. When did you realize a family member's cruelty was actually their greatest weakness? I'm reading every single story. The night returns to me in fragments. The heavy stench of my father's cigarettes, the grit of construction dust still clinging to his work shirt from the development site, the slam of documents on the kitchen table. He didn't even bother sitting down. A manila folder skidded across the wood toward me, its corners bent, my name typed neatly at the top of every form inside. Law, accounting, business administration, every path except the one I had already chosen. I stood clutching a letter that felt heavier than stone, the acceptance into the air medical flight program I'd been pursuing for years. My hands shook as I held it out, like a child offering proof she was worth keeping. He didn't glance at it. His eyes stayed cold, locked on mine. This house isn't raising a glorified taxi driver, he said flatly, voice thick with contempt. I swallowed hard, heart hammering in my ears. I'm choosing aviation, I whispered. It was the first time in my life I'd ever contradicted him directly. The silence that followed was colder than the rain hammering against the kitchen windows. Then he walked to the front door, pulled it open, and without raising his voice said, You want to fly? Fine. Start by surviving without me. Get out. My mother burst into tears, rushing to him, clutching his arm, begging through broken sobs. Her voice was drowned by the thunder outside and his stony refusal to soften. On the staircase, Marcus hovered, pale and stricken, his eyes darting between us, loyalty to our father weighing heavier than the apology he couldn't voice aloud. I remember the sound of my own breath, shallow, as if the walls of the house themselves had expelled me. I lifted the strap of my duffel bag, heavy with nothing more than a few clothes, a pair of worn running shoes, and the folded acceptance letter pressed deep in the side pocket. The rain struck like needles when I stepped outside. My jacket clung to my skin, soaked through within seconds. Behind me, the door slammed shut, the echo sealing the fracture that would split 17 years wide. The air smelled of wet pavement and smoke, and I knew even then it would haunt me forever. I tightened my grip on the bag, set my jaw, and walked into the storm. Every step in that darkness, I repeated one vow in my head. From now on, every mile I fly will be my answer. Back in the present, I sat at my small kitchen table with my flight log open, pages filled with hastily scrawled notes from missions that blurred together over the years. One entry caught my eye, dated October 2014. My handwriting leaned urgent, cramped by adrenaline. Cliff rescue, female 1617, severe hypothermia risk. The memory snapped back sharp as sea spray. A storm off the coast, winds battering the rotor blades, ropes whipping as I rappelled down the slick face of a cliff jutting out over the Pacific. The girl clung desperately to the rocks, her knuckles bloodless, eyes wide with terror. I could feel the vibration of her shivering through the rope as I secured her harness. I pressed my forehead against hers, locking her gaze amid the howl of the wind. "Breathe with me, just look at me, don't let go." My voice was calm, though my own arms burned from the strain. Inch by inch, we rose together, the sea clawing at our heels, until finally the winch lifted us clear. By the time we reached the helicopter, my hands were raw. The strip of gauze I'd wrapped around her arm was soaked stiff with salt water. I still kept that strip, faded and brittle, tucked away like a secret only I understood. Later, I'd received a message, just a brief note from someone signing only as S, words of gratitude for saving her life. For years, I never knew who she was. I carried the mystery like an unanswered question. It wasn't until a few weeks before Marcus's wedding that the truth landed like another storm. Sophie, his bride, was the girl from that cliff. She looked me in the eye, her voice steady but full of weight. "You saved me once, and I've never forgotten. Tomorrow I'm going to tell them. Everyone needs to know who you are." The rehearsal dinner smelled of garlic butter and salmon, the kind of scent that clung to your clothes long after you'd left. Jazz played low under the hum of conversation, glasses clinking, silverware chiming against plates. I smoothed the fabric of the simple dress I'd chosen, neat but unassuming, and took my seat halfway down the table. At the head, my father leaned back with the air of a man who owned not just the room, but the entire city. He swirled his glass of wine, eyes narrowing at me before his mouth twisted into a half-smile. "Flying in circles all day," he drawled loud enough for everyone to hear. "What good does that really accomplish for anyone?" The room froze. Forks hovered midair. Every gaze turned toward me, waiting for a reaction. Then a woman near the end of the table set her napkin down and spoke, her voice carrying with steady conviction. "You're Amara Whitfield, aren't you? The air ambulance pilot. You transported my husband last year when his heart stopped. He's alive today because of you." A murmur rippled through the guests. For a fleeting second, warmth filled the silence. Recognition. Gratitude. But my father cut it short with a sharp shake of his head. "Don't exaggerate," he snapped. "It's a reckless stunt job, nothing more. Don't paint it as something heroic." Another voice joined in, rough but respectful. One of his old construction crew leaned forward, meeting his eyes. "Robert, it's dangerous work and it matters. You know it does." Color rose up my father's neck. He barked back, "Not in this family, it doesn't. We don't call that a profession." Beneath the table, Sophie's hand found mine. A small squeeze, quick but firm, her whisper hidden under the scrape of chairs. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'll tell them." I lifted my glass of wine, let the tartness settle on my tongue, and smiled. Not in defiance, but in calm. No retort, no scene, just the quiet strength of someone who had weathered storms harsher than this. Across the table, my father's stare burned into me, trying to crush me as he always had. But this time, I didn't flinch. I'd already learned how to stand steady in the eye of a hurricane. Later that night, the wind screamed down the coast, rattling the thin window panes of the small inn where I was staying. I sat alone at the desk, the ocean's roar crashing in time with the pulse in my ears. In front of me lay a wooden box I hadn't opened in years. Its hinges creaked as if even they carried the weight of memory. Inside, folded carefully, was a letter from my mother. The paper had yellowed, her handwriting delicate but unwavering. Hope is the thing with feathers. She'd left it for me in her final days, a whisper of faith pressed into ink when her voice could no longer carry the words beneath it, another envelope, never sealed. The letter I had once written to my father, inviting him to watch me receive a commendation for distinguished service. My words blurred where tears had fallen years ago. I had never sent it, he had never known. I reached for my phone, almost on instinct, and scrolled back to the message that had clawed at me earlier. "Don't come, don't embarrass him." Tonight, I traced it to its source, and the truth landed like a punch to the ribs. The number belonged to one of his secondary phones. It had been him all along. My hands shook, but not from fear. Anger steadied me. He hadn't just denied me. He wanted to erase me completely, to keep me invisible even here, at my own brother's wedding. I captured the screen, the damning evidence, and stored it away. Then I deleted the thread, not as surrender but as choice. Tomorrow would speak louder than any reply I could send. One by one, I returned the letters to the box. On top, I laid the strip of salt-stained gauze, brittle now with age. 3 relics stacked like layers of my life. My mother's hope, my father's absence, and the life I had fought to save when no one believed in